first became aware of James because Sina, when she started working with us, maybe 4 months ago, 4 months ago, and she, in her first week, she left behind on my desk a couple books, and because I like to read, and I don't know, I'll make a secret of that. I guess I probably talk about it maybe too much, but so she gave me a couple books, and I walked in, I saw them, and go, oh man, I got to read these books now, because they appeared to me to be kind of business books, which I don't read that many business books, and kind of soft, you know, the word kindness, and you know, most business books, particularly when they use kind of soft words, are written by consultants or people that haven't actually lived in the real world. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be kind to my new partner, and I'm going to read it so that she'll know that I care. And ends up that when I read it, I was like, wow, this is me in a lot of ways. This is what we're doing. I've never taken the time to actually draw it out in a systemic sort of way. But it really resonated with me. So I appreciate you giving me the book. And I'm glad that I had that momentary impulse of kindness to actually read it. And glad that we get the chance to visit a little bit. And look, we could probably talk for a long time. We already had a 30-minute conversation that turned into an hour last week. But certainly the most important thing here is for you to get the chance to interact. And so hopefully y'all will take advantage of the opportunity to ask some questions and have conversation. But I'll try to kick us off a little bit. So, you know, I was raised by a pastor. My father's a pastor, and my broader family was very involved in governmental service. And then I paid for college by joining the military. And so my formative years as an adult were in the military. So everything was service oriented. And when I was coming out of the military and trying to figure out how was I going to carve a life, it was a little bit of a tough equation for me to crack. You know, how am I going to do well? Am I going to raise enough money, or not raise enough money, but how am I going to raise a family, right? And then how am I going to create enough wealth that I can actually do what I want to do, which is provide service and live a life that, at least on surface level, is more about the greater community. And what I've discovered in community banking is that I can do both, right? Very similar to your chart where you had money and kindness, and I can actually do well by doing good in community banking. And as I did that for a longer time period, I realized that it's not just community banking. It's also just being a CEO is a unique opportunity to do well by doing good. And those aren't in tension. Those two actually build on each other. And so what I've discovered is that for me, being a CEO is something of a calling, much like for others, being a pastor is a calling, or being involved in politics is a calling. And first question I want to ask you is it seems to me, looking out, that that's a very underappreciated fact. That's something that as a country, we don't spend a lot of time talking about, is how business leaders can actually live out a life that has tremendous value, not just the dollars that they create, but the value that they spread throughout their company and throughout their client base and throughout the community. And it's very easy for politicians to speak ill of business leaders. And certainly on a college campus, I would say the business school may not be representative, but the rest of the college campus, there's maybe not in Louisiana as much as other places in the country, there's certainly more likely than not to be a negative cloud around dedicating a life to business. So if we do what you suggest we do, doesn't necessarily have to be business, but business is one outcome. I think part of that might require us as a country thinking differently about how we encourage people to broaden their horizons when it comes to thinking about their calling. How is this? And then that's a little bit of what you're doing, I think. But can you talk a little bit about that? How we as a country come to value business for what it actually can be?
Well, when we met, I didn't know his father was a pastor. And so the women of Ashley Stewart used to tease me and say, "You're not our CEO, you're sort of like our pastor." So I was like, it happened very early. And I'm like, interesting. I think at the Dean's Conference where the two deans here, we met. I said, how good a job are we tailoring the entire curriculum, not just at business school, but in elementary school, is to lead. What does a leader mean? And I think that's the calling, is to lead. And great leaders, they don't need a title. Think about some of the greatest leaders that you read about in history books or they don't have a title. So I'd rather us think about a transcendent like leadership, which is always of service. Great leaders are of service. And then the title that you take, whether it's in business, CEO, in the ministry, pastor, right, or in a not-for-profit, executive director, those are the secondary titles. So for the young people, it's like, be a leader and try to find people who lead. And CEO is just what's on the card. Does that make sense? And so being a leader is...
Back to your thoughts about language.
Yeah, it's really
right. How do we use
kindness,
language, right?
leader, Matt, like these definitions, we, particularly now, like young people, please read the book. Like really, like the short form stuff, 6-second, got the attention span. It's all designed to strip away your decision-making abilities. I know the people who design the algorithms in Silicon Valley. I mean, I know them personally. This is not a game. So, like, read. Life is long form, and being a leader, it takes a long time to be able to call yourself, quote, a leader. But it is a calling. I think that is that's in the realm of physics, like kindness, math, existential, like these beautiful principles. That is the foundation of our country too. I mean, it's been an aspirational country to try to make good on these aspirational principles. I think great businesses do that too, while recognizing and having grace and realizing that you're not like that every day. And you have to forgive too. So that's being a leader, being a CEO. I just want to also tell everyone, it's not a prize. It's an obligation. It's hard work. The right CEOs look at it as it's a burden. I know I'm sure he's up at 2 a.m. saying, shoot, that branch isn't doing well, or I made a bad decision. Like, I'm responsible for how many jobs? A great CEO thinks like that and gets exhausted, actually. Bad CEOs, they want the prize. They want to make a ton of money, make short-term killing, and leave. And I'm sure you're talking about that in business school right now, about just the capitalism. It's changed. There's very little accountability for businesses these days, and that's why I'm here, right? That's why Ashley Shield was a small business, why I spent a lot of time with small businesses and regional markets. My father-in-law did this with First Union in North Carolina. It's where I'm spending a lot more time, where I think America really is. It's in these tighter communities, and this is the strength of this country and the strength of our economy.
Yeah, let's follow up there a little bit. Said a number of things that resonate. One is this idea of our country historically being aspirational, which I think is partly a function of how we used to operate politically, and also partly a function of the fact that most of our country's business development was done through small businesses for a long period of time, which is different from running a larger business. And to me, one of the threats that we face as a country is bigness. And I don't just mean the frustrations of being part of a bigger company, but and I don't even mean the sometimes painful outcomes of decisions made by people in big companies, but I mean the accountability is the word you use that it requires to run a small business. There are a lot of things as a bank that decisions, I'll take the banking world because it's the world that I'm in, but there are a lot of decisions that we make that are existential, that if we were much bigger would just be a mistake, right? Or would be just one of a lot of decisions. And when you have to live under that kind of pressure, you tend to give everything you have to try to win, right?
Yeah.
And winning can be defined in a lot of ways, but if you think about the natural Weber, who you and I have both studied a little bit, talked about the routinization of bureaucracy, and it's the fact that the natural way of organization is to perpetuate itself and to get larger. This is what just happens. The markets reward bigness. Part of our drive to be bigger is the fact that I know that we can be bigger, we can be more efficient, which will then be recognized in the market with a higher stock price, right? I mean, everything is kind of built that way. And then now you see even the government is increasingly being driven at the federal level versus the city level, if you will. So I think it would be good for these business school students to hear from you if you think about how you're positioning your own careers and the kinds of companies that you want to work for and want to create. That maybe the goal shouldn't be to create the biggest company, you go work for the biggest company. Maybe it should be more intrinsic value that you can gain from working every day in a small business.
Yeah, you remember the feedback loops I showed you with kindness and money compounding? There's the opposite is true too. Those are called virtuous open feedback loops. So this is all like systems dynamics. We tend to think linearly. I don't know why. We're born not to, but we do. There are also things called non-virtuous feedback loops. There are other things that also go forever too. That's called things like jealousy and addiction, hate. Those also compound forever too. And so the flight toward bigness, it's an addiction. In the book, I write a lot about the word enough. And that is an agency decision. Like, when is enough? Like, what? Enough everything, right? Life, money, joy. Like, when's enough? This whole country was built on, the book is like an ode to classical liberalism and federalism. I don't say those words, but it is what's underpinning the words. Nature does the exact opposite. Nature's natural tendency is toward chaos. It's entropy. So the more you build systems, human-made systems that try to control and put things in boxes, you're actually going counter to the laws of physics and chemistry. So I've always tried to build businesses, live my life in a way consistent with nature. It makes it really easy. Does that make sense? Like, the more I have open feedback loops working for me, life gets pretty easy because you don't do anything. It's like, and I'm like, oh, how nice. So think about even the way the book is spreading. That's not luck that it opened up as the #1 book in the United States. It's not. It's not luck that it's happening. It's not luck that the music I chose is in pentatonic, E flat major. There's certain things that in science, music, laws of physics that make things really easy to grow without friction. And so that's how I view things. So like in terms of smallness, these connectedness, those pictures you saw, that all came from me, Cherry, and Shelley. It was core friendships, and then people wanted to be part of this and wanted to be part. It grew in triangles. So when you think small business, medium-sized business, you have to decide for yourself, like, one, you can scale it this way, the way I'm saying. And I think there's going to be a whole rush toward more small business, medium-sized business in this country. But it's going to happen, or else I think we're in trouble.
I think it's already happening a little bit, but what I hope is that the government, when they make decisions, will figure out that the laws that they make and the decisions the agencies make have ramifications.
Yes, they're favoring the large
and unintended consequences, and most decisions made by the government today seem to me to favor the big guys.
I think
and
that's right.
that's a problem, and not just for the economy, but for us in our development as people.
Yeah.
So I think part of what I'm hearing here is that it's, for all the students here, it's not enough to just think about what your own structure is with the 3 circles, however many circles you might have. You also have to think about what structures and systems are already existing. and the interplay that you have to be able to navigate that system. Life isn't happening just by accident.
No, and
There are things happening that lead to other things being more likely to happen.
And the things that we're talking about, just think about the type of things we're talking about. These are reading philosophy, sociology, like history, like classic economics texts. It's not.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because you and I both come from at the collegiate level anyway, interdisciplinary and academic backgrounds. But I majored in social studies, which at Harvard was combination government, economics, history, sociology, psychology, and you did history and literature, which doesn't, most folks would not think of those two going together, right? Which is kind of the point.
Yeah.
One of my daughters is about to start college, and she's telling me that she's interested in majoring in business. And, I hate to say this in the business school, but I'm a little bit hesitant for her to go major in business, because I'm not sure that it's enough of a well-rounded background to actually be successful in business one day, right? Because there's a lot of stuff you learn about, detailed stuff that you need to pick up at some point in business, but it's not generally a very interdisciplinary field. In most fields now, we're moving in the direction of fragmentation of our attention spans, and particularly with STEM education being the thing now, which is great. We need that. But I worry a little bit about the fact that we don't pull from all directions in the way that you and I were exposed to. Are you hearing about any kind of movement in the business education arena that might give you comfort that we might be broadening that horizon a little bit? And particularly, I want to ask you about the role of ethics.
Yeah.
And I don't know, at the school here, Dean Lawrence, is there a class on ethics? Yeah. Okay. Good. So.
Well, what I'm hearing is there's this thing called red helicopter. That's what I'm doing. I mean, at the Business School Dean's Conference where I was invited, it was me and a true academic. He is the professor of AI at Wharton. Think about why we were both invited. It's fundamentally about agency, isn't it? Like about what should humans be? Like what does it mean to be human? Like that's the next 10 years we're all going to confront this. Just to put a finer point on this, with Ashley Stewart, when I was begging for money in 2013-14, we were rejected for many reasons. The company's track record, female, black women, first-time CEO, a lot of things. The other reason was that some people didn't like what I was saying on the investment thesis. I said, once in a generation, equilibrium, systems reshift, World War III, Civil War, loneliness, depression, divorce from being human, demographic trends that are going to be shockingly bad. Why wouldn't a brand that has this sense of community have value? I don't understand why you don't place value on this. And I said that in that future, wouldn't leaders and brands that were very human, and you could tell we're truthful, is that attractive? Will that be more attractive to people? That was what I said. The world that we're living in today, I hate to be right about it, I was right. And none of those predictions I made were from my business studies. Those were from studying history and literature, and times when the world's greatest economists were actually poets and fiction writers. Charles Dickens, Herman Melville, those were economists. We've come to the conclusion,
Adam Smith, the professor of philosophy.
Yeah, Adam Smith wrote about morality. You didn't divorce money from morality, ever, and ethics. It was interwoven, it was like soup. We pulled everything apart and said, study economics, but don't study also why Adam Smith said what he said. Right, and now we have cognitive science and neuroscience, which they didn't have 300 years ago. We have that discipline. They're all related. Why do people behave the way they want to behave?
Fine.
And so that, I think, is going to be the future. And I think 10 years from now, when parts of your brain are in the cloud, it's coming. Won't things that cannot be AI-able have more value, because a lot of the vertical things that AI can do well will be outsourced and faster than you. I think that you need to think this way. It's all the synaptic connections, like your brain, the things that are orthogonal, that don't make any sense. A human being can put weird concepts together and say, look, how cool is this? That's very difficult for computers to do. The book, no one could have predicted anything that happened in that book. No computer will ever be able to predict that what you saw happened. And we were rewarded for it in the capital markets for that reason. And the second thing, the way I wrote the book, no one will ever be able to do that via AI either. It's a patchwork of like 150 stories written in music, to the point where HarperCollins was nervous about the book, saying it won't be successful because it doesn't fit an algorithm. It's in 27 codes, from money to Buddhism, to from Christianity to like org theory. But I think all of us have that. Like the people, and you're so interesting. Like, so don't be put into a binary code. So ethics to me, like in business, like the reason what I said there, it's like, what are we creating at business schools? And I'm optimistic about business schools because they're a little bit less regulated than law schools and med schools, that there can be more, more shifting of the curriculum, and we can create great leaders and put in humanities curriculum and cog-sci curriculum and develop the leaders that we want. That's why I went to that business school conference.
I'm fascinated by this duality of life and the fact that there's often apparent tension which reconciles itself over the long run. And your comments about AI seemingly being in tension with our development as individuals is not actually true. It actually could end up, the progress that we make in technology could actually end up enabling us to thrive on this other side. And I think that a good thing for maybe to discuss a little more depth for the business school students is that kind of paradox of most of life, which is that there's a lot of tension between paths, and that tension is actually where a lot of health is. If you look at your slide where you had Musk and the red helicopter together, yeah, that is a little funny that two such opposite, with seemingly opposite perspectives could be there side by side. But one of the fascinating things about our country and our world and our ability to act human is the fact that we can hold those two things in tension.
Yeah.
And there's benefit to be gained by the fact that there is tension there. One of the things that's hardest for me as a CEO is charting a path, but in my head I always want to say, but think about this too, right?
Yeah.
And you want to grow, but you want to grow in a certain healthy way. And there are different times at which different parts of that choice between the two are more important than the right answer. There is no textbook that just lays out in black and white what to do. Yep. It's about navigating these tensions, and maybe you can talk a little more about at some point in your business career some experiences that you had where you had to make some choices, knowing that there were some other choices that might also be right.
You're going to all have faced those type of decisions, and sometimes, like with Ashley Stewart, I don't think I could have looked at myself if I had turned the other way. And I'm very honest in the book. I was gnashing my teeth. I wanted someone to show up, give money, and I could come back after 6 months. But after 6 months, I knew I was right mathematically, like the business model was right. And then two, I promised, I'm like ride or die. That's what I said. I couldn't look the other way. And trust me, again, I was gnashing my teeth. I'm like, okay, like this is what I'm doing.
So between 37 and you said 42 when you did Ashley Stewart?
Yeah, it was 6 years.
And what did you do in the in-between?
I started my own investment firm. I started, one thing I'm very proud of, I've never lost a lender money. So in private equity, you buy a lot of companies and they become little assets, so you don't think about the employees anymore. I do all the time. I'm like, we own the company. There are families that are relying on, we can't screw around here. And then the second thing was lenders. Sometimes when you're an equity owner and the deal is not a good deal, you your natural inclination is that you walk away from the deal, you spend less time on it, and you,
And most private equity guys don't sign the note,
yeah,
right? There's no recourse personally.
right. So in this case, you would likely be the lender, right, and I would be the equity owner, and then the business is going sideways. I'm like, all right, Jude, your problem, you take it.
Right.
I don't care. I don't do that. I just won't do that. And so the lenders really I developed a reputation on Wall Street that James, when you do business with him, it's this. And so when I left, the lenders all called me and said, you know, we've got all of these companies with really bad private equity owners. Why don't you come in and work with us? And we'll take the company and you know what to do with it. And so that's what I did. So I did a bunch of these investments.
Became a turnaround expert for the banks.
Yeah, and like we did one deal with Ulster Diamonds. We made like 68 times our money in 2 years. So a lot of what I do is I find value when no one else finds it. I'm like, there's value here. And I do that as a high school teacher and as a professor too. And students are like, what's there to like about me? I'm like, what are you talking about? There's so much to like about you. This is what I see. Oh, what's your narrative? Right? So it's the same skill set. It's finding a story of a person or a story of a business. It's no different.
A couple of great examples there of doing the right thing, even though it was hard in the short term, ended up being a great long-term investment, right? So if you hadn't done the right thing vis-a-vis your peer that they wanted you to fire, then you wouldn't have embarked upon that next successful journey in life. And if you hadn't done the right thing by making sure that banks got paid back, which is the right thing to do, you wouldn't have been rewarded with the opportunities that they brought to you. So a lot of times kindness is self-serving. I don't mean that in a negative way, but it gets paid back. But there's what we call in banking, a gap mismatch, or a duration mismatch, right?
Yes.
And so kindness is a short-term start anyway. And sometimes the payoff doesn't come out for a long time, but it does show up eventually.
I mean, they'll never describe themselves as such, but Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, I think they would love the book. Charlie's not around anymore, but they are fundamentally kind. Kind doesn't suffer full. Kind, it's not niceness. Like, this is not a full suffering thing. It's a longitudinal investment strategy of your time, your social capital, and of money. You're betting for the long haul. But if you believe in compounding in terms of money, it compounds for you and you win in the long term. And this is why Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, they always look at their annual conferences. There's no fool suffering in those conferences, right? They're saying it's pretty simple. Don't do 90% of things. Focus on what you do, make the right decision, and then have the humility to not do anything and let it go. And that was the definition of agency I put up there. They're not going to say surrender, which is more of a philosophical term, but it's the art of doing something correctly once, and then have the humility to get better people around you and let them do their job. I mean, they are kind investors.
Oh, wait, there's a great book called The Tao of Capital, which talks about the roundabout way to get into where you want to be eventually. And a lot of times it's not a straight line. It's how do I make these other decisions that don't seem to move me forward, that actually enable me to go around, which can be the shortest path sometimes.